last lesson we did because it was 3 weeks ago. And then people, we had a lot of discussions about verses, about different things. I looked up a few things we can go over tonight. And if I don't get to something you like, just say something. And if you're online, you have something you want to talk about, just go ahead and type it in there, and Misako will tell us later on. So we're going to go over the lesson one more time, and then I'm going to do a short little 5-minute lesson on how to not take offense. All right, some quick things about that, and then get into some verses. Last week, people asked about verses about different situations. So I have like 10 or 12 verses I looked up that we can discuss and see what we think about them as we go forward. Does that make sense for tonight? And then next week, we'll go forward to lesson number 4. And so our class will end, just so you know, on Mother's Day. So that'll be our last one. Wrap up nice and neat. And then just, the 17th of May and the 24th of May, we're going to have a guest lecturer because I'm going to be on vacation. I'll be back to probably the 24th, but I'm not going to do anything that day. I'll be fried. I'm going on vacation with my daughter, and she's bringing her friend that's been coming to church. So I'm not sure if I'm going to have a vacation or I'm just going to be pulling my hair out the entire time. I might need a vacation when I get home. Though the neat thing is they're flying down ahead of time. They don't want to drive with us down, which is nice. So I don't have to worry. Why are we stopping? Why are we doing this? But they're going to be with my mother for 3 days without me. So that'll be interesting. All right. So, all right. Oh, she will. Yep. Yeah. So, I think I'm not worried about my mother, because my mother will have them doing things and they won't be. Yeah. All right. So we're going to back up, catch up lesson 3. So if you remember all of lesson 3, you can sleep right now. If you don't remember lesson 3, we'll go in there and then we'll get into the verses you guys asked about last time. Okay. So here we go. It was a good lesson, I thought. So.
People who come to this gym learn to fight. They learn to wrestle, to defend themselves, to be ready if someone comes at them. Admittedly, I've not spent a lot of time in gyms like this, but sometimes life in the real world can feel a lot like this gym, at least just as threatening. These days, it seems like more than ever, we struggle with what might be called the patterns of offense. We can be so sensitive. We can take things so personally. We can be so easily hurt, so quick to pull away or lash out. We wince at every interaction, treating casual conversations like they could turn into contact sports. You see this everywhere. Like social media, it's not just a platform anymore. It's like a way to keep a daily inventory of who's offended us. Family disagreements can become diplomatic incidents. In a world where everyone seems that way, where everyone is ready to take offense at the smallest thing, we're tempted to get caught up in that way of thinking, where we're always offended and upset, and we find ourselves just irritable and bitter and angry. And the real battle in those moments is what's taking place in our minds. And if we want to break free from this pattern of offense that so many people are caught up in, then we have to change the way we think. You know what's fascinating about the brain is when we get offended, it can actually feel good. Offense can trigger a release of chemicals in our brains, dopamine, cortisol, oxytocin. Being offended can give us this sense of identity, even a sense of community where we feel connected with all the other people who are offended. And so that pattern of offense in our thinking can become self-reinforcing. And before long, without even meaning to do it, we start looking for potential offenses. As our thoughts dwell on offense, it has a snowballing effect. As the snowball of offense rolls down the hill of life, it picks up more offenses and more offenses, and has a way of turning into an avalanche of anger that causes all kinds of unintended destruction. And so taking offense may not be a sin, but it can easily lead to anger, which will likely lead to sin. And so that's why Paul writes these words in Ephesians 4. He says, in your anger, in your offense, do not sin. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, and don't give the devil a foothold. In other words, don't let your mind and your thoughts dwell on an offense. Paul tells us not to let anger spend the night. The way we do that is by taking our thoughts captive when we're offended. A small seed of offense has a way of growing into bitterness, and once bitterness takes root, the Bible says it brings all kinds of weeds to the surface. And so Paul warns us about not sinning in our anger. And he goes on to say in Ephesians 4:31, get rid of all of it. Get rid of all bitterness and rage and anger, brawling, slander, along with every form of malice. It's the first four words that are so challenging here. Get rid of all.
Simple,
Scripture
right?
tells us whatever
Easy.
it is, big or small, get rid of all anger. So then what do you do? Like if someone offends you and makes you mad, when you feel attacked and hurt, how can you be intentional with your thoughts so you're not caught up in this pattern of always being bitter and offended? To help us capture those thoughts and replace them with thoughts that are obedient to Christ, I want to give you one word to remember. It's the word stop. Simple word, just stop. And here's how Scripture challenges us with that word. It's from James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20. James writes, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Being quick to listen and slow to speak, it's not what we feel like doing when we're offended. It's counterintuitive. But here's the good news. Because of neuroplasticity, this gets a little easier every time you do it. Your brain can learn a new pattern of responding to offense. So let me give you two questions to ask yourself when you're caught up in this pattern of offense. Here's the first question. Where is this coming from? What's causing me to be offended? Why am I taking this so personally? It's a surprisingly deep question, especially when our level of anger or response feels like it's just out of balance with the situation or what's been done to us. Psychologist Dr. John Gottman calls this the anger iceberg. And he says that with an actual iceberg, there is way more underneath the water that you can't see than above the water that you can see. And anger is like that. Offense is like that. One of the reasons we need to be slow to be offended is so that we can stop and think. Think about what's below the surface. When you're offended, when you find yourself getting worked up and upset because of what somebody said or did to you, there's often something else going on that has got you caught up in that pattern of thinking. So stop and ask yourself a few questions. Am I being defensive? Do I quickly try to justify myself and counterattack instead of listening honestly and humbly? Am I ruminating? Am I replaying the disagreement over and over and over in my mind? See, what's underneath the surface can be harder to see. It's often something we want to keep hidden. So that means we have to stop and think, okay, where is this coming from? Here's a second question to ask when you're caught up in the pattern of offense. What would it be like? It's this question that moves us from offense to compassion. In John chapter 4, we find Jesus at a well in the heat of the day. He's hot, he's thirsty. There's a well right in front of him, but he's got nothing that he can use to draw water from that well. I mean, for me, that's already enough to make me irritable. A Samaritan woman comes and he speaks to her, and she's not sure if she should answer. Most Jewish men would have been offended by the presence of a Samaritan woman, especially if she spoke to him. As their conversation progresses, in an effort to get the attention off of herself, she tries to purposely offend Jesus with some comments and some questions about the proper place of worship. It had to do with this long-standing argument and point of tension between Jews and Samaritans. And Jesus doesn't get drawn into her trap of offense. Instead, he reveals to her that he is the living water. He's the one who could quench her deepest thirst. When someone's words or actions seem designed to offend us and provoke us, our tendency is to react, to be sensitive, to let our level of offense prove the depth of our conviction on a certain issue or the depth of our hurt. But Jesus responds with grace and compassion. Question is, how was he able to do that? I think it's because he knew her and he knew her story. He knew the disappointment that she had felt. He knew the betrayal that she had experienced. He understood why she would be so contentious and distrusting towards a man like him. And so in a world that's quick to think the worst and take offense, choosing compassion is a radical act. And it starts with taking our thoughts captive and considering, what would it be like to be in someone else's position? You know what's interesting about this gym is everyone here knows they're going to get hit. Like, they expect it. They walk in ready for it. They train for it. But in life, we sometimes walk around expecting everyone to treat us perfectly, and then we're shocked and offended when they don't. But what if we could develop a different mindset, a different way of thinking, and not one that's cynical or expecting the worst in people, but one that's resilient and ready to respond with grace before it's even needed. One that's prepared to respond to hurt with prayer and blessing. I think about Jesus on the cross. You talk about having the right to be offended. And yet, what were his thoughts? What were his words? He said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And that is a completely different way of thinking than what most of us would default to. He used prayer to capture his thoughts and turn them towards compassion. To be honest, I never thought I would become a person who's easily offended. As a pastor, I prided myself on having thick skin, but somewhere along the way, things changed. A critical comment here, a cynical question there, each perceived slight felt like a personal attack. And I started to think more about these things. And the more I thought about those things, the more my neural pathways were established. And I found myself caught up in this pattern of thinking that was increasingly causing me to be sensitive and defensive and cynical, and at least a little bit bitter. And the breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. I'd spent several hours responding to critical and cynical emails, at least from my perspective. And I tried to give gentle and pastoral answers, but my patience was running low, my kindness was on empty. And I opened up an email to find this scathing message from a church member that I didn't even know personally. And his words were harsh, critiquing everything from my leadership style to my choice of clothing. And I had had enough. And so instead of firing off a rebuttal email, I looked up this guy's phone number and decided I'm just going to call him direct. And I did. And I could see my nostrils flaring as my neurotransmitters were firing. I was ready to give him a piece of my mind. The number he saw pop up on his phone just said it was from the church. He didn't know it was me on the other end, so I had the element of surprise, but his tired voice answered, and I knew immediately that something was off. He answered the phone and said, "Hello, is this the church? Are you calling about my son?" And his voice cracked. My heart shifted. My thoughts were redirected. This is Pastor Kyle, I said. I could feel my anger already dissipating. I was calling to talk to you about the email you sent, but first, would you update me on your son? And he went on to tell me that his son was down in Nashville, and the hospital that they had taken him to after the overdose was telling the family that the son needed to be transferred to an inpatient facility, but the man said to me, "We don't know where to send him, and we don't have the money for that." I told him we could help, that we could walk with him through all of these things. And after talking to him for a few more minutes, I asked if I could pray for his son. And as I prayed over the phone for his son, I could hear this man softly crying. And all of my self-righteous offense and all of my prideful anger just evaporated. Here was a father, terrified by the things in his life he couldn't control, lashing out in pain with an email. And I had taken that and woven that into a pattern of offense in my thinking and was being bitter and upset instead of taking my thoughts captive. I'd become so focused on my own feelings and so quick to be offended that I had lost sight of one of the reasons I became a pastor, to help people through some of their darkest moments like this. Ephesians 4:32 says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. You will have times when your instant knee-jerk reaction is going to be offended and get angry, but you have to take your thoughts captive. You got to get rid of it. Replace your offense with a new pattern of thinking, kindness, Ephesians says, compassion, forgiveness. Because remember, when you were the one who was offensive towards God, remember how he treated you. Well, before we wrap up, I want you to take a moment to reflect on some questions. Don't rush through these. Let them sink in. Here's the first question. Who are you currently holding an offense against right now? Who's the person that comes to your mind? Now ask yourself, what might be going on in their life that you don't know about? Here's another question. What would it look like to pray for those who have offended you instead of rehearsing the offense? Question number 3, what past hurt might be making you more sensitive these days than maybe you have been in the past? And then one last question. If Jesus were to sit down with you right now, what would he say about the offenses that you're holding on to? You can stay trapped in the pattern of offense, or you can choose a new pattern, one of grace and understanding and freedom. It's all determined by the thoughts you think. Well, as we've talked about, sometimes the most powerful way to see ourselves clearly is through story. Jesus knew this, which is why he often taught in parables. Stories help us step outside ourselves and our own emotions and see patterns of thinking that we might otherwise miss. They help us look below the iceberg. So I want to share a story with you. And as you watch this story unfold, consider your own life and the thoughts that have created a pattern of offense. In a peaceful village, there lived 2 neighbors, Aaron and Vexana, but everyone called her Vex for short. Each tended to their own flower garden, separated by a stone wall standing no more than 2 feet off the ground. Vex kept her rose garden meticulous, while Aaron enjoyed a more natural garden filled with a variety of flowers. Though Vex could be easily upset when things didn't go just right, and Aaron was sometimes careless, they enjoyed being neighbors and admired each other's gardens. One windy day, Vex noticed a single dandelion growing on Aaron's side of the wall. She watched in horror as the wind blew the seeds off that dandelion. Her eyes followed one single seed that made it across the wall and landed in her garden right at her feet. She was mildly annoyed, but chose to ignore it. As the days passed, she watched it carefully, and sure enough, where that seed had landed, a dandelion grew, and along with it, her irritation. One morning, she walked out, and there amongst her perfect roses was a dandelion, a white puffball of seeds. She got down on the ground and looked at it closely. She could hear Aaron working in his garden, whistling the same song he always whistled, "Always look on the bright side of life," from his favorite movie, Monty Python. In the past, she had never minded it. She even thought it was somewhat charming, but today, she found his whistling intolerable. Without saying a word, she marched inside and slammed the door. Aaron was a bit startled when the door slammed, but went back to his whistling. Later that day, when he saw Vex outside, he asked her if everything was okay. She was staring at the dandelion and her rose bushes when she responded with a terse, "Everything is fine." Vex kept her eye on that dandelion. Every time she stepped outside, it seemed to mock her, threatening to spread more seeds. And sure enough, after a number of days, the seeds had blown off and spread amongst her roses. Soon, her rose garden had at least a dozen dandelions. When Aaron noticed the dandelions, he asked Vex if he could help her pull them from her garden. She rolled her eyes and walked away, vowing to only work in her garden early in the morning so she wouldn't have to see Aaron. Vex began staying inside most days. Occasionally, she would look out her window, but the sight of Aaron casually tending to his wild garden made her even more vexed. One morning, she woke up furious. She had had enough. She got on her riding lawnmower and mowed down her once beautiful rose garden. And while she was at it, she mowed down Aaron's garden as well. She spent the day building the rock wall between their properties tall enough that she wouldn't be able to look over the top. And if you ride your bike by Vexana's house today, you'll see her yard has been overtaken by weeds and dandelions. But if you listen closely, You'll probably be able to hear Aaron whistling his favorite song as he works in his new garden of sunflowers. It started as a seed that turned into a weed that at any time could have been picked or pulled, but instead, the days passed, the seeds spread, and the weeds took over.
All right. So that's just kind of recap of the last lesson. And if you missed it, you caught up on it. And pattern, how, I don't know. People, do we really get offended easily? That's a rhetorical question. If you answer anything but no, it's you know why it is? Because we're a wimpy society nowadays. Think about it. Because we allow people we instead of doing the work to just get the weed out, we just let it be there. And we just hope, well, we think it's the other person's problem, right? Most offenses happen because someone did something dumb, but most of the time they don't realize they did something dumb. And then we don't know that something blew over, and it just as easy could have picked it up and been done with it, right? Could have talked to the person. Kind of like this morning where I told you about how to mirror one another. What an interesting thing. You should try it once and see what happens. It works. We got to let the offenses go. So tonight, I'm a quick short lesson on some things that I was studying this week for this. And then after I go to the verses, if you have another question or another verse or something that answer what we talked about last time, we can continue along. So when the Bible talks about being offended, it comes from the Greek word for bait. The enemy will try to bait you with your pain to get you stuck in the offense. That's interesting. Offenses come out just like anger is unfulfilled expectations. You expected something, and that's why people don't understand anger. People wonder why you're offended. It's something that caused something inside of you. The dandelion didn't mean a whole lot to the one neighbor, but it did to the other neighbor, didn't it? And but it's a matter, what are we going to do about that? And the thing is, you get stuck in the offense, regardless of the words or what is said. We must hand over the offense to God. The devil knows how to make that way. Like I said, we live in a very wimpy society. We've been conditioned not to talk to one another. We've been conditioned to stand behind a screen and say whatever we want to say instead of actually dealing with the person. I know it's really a lost art. And it's why people are dealing with anger. And why you see anger issues at an all-time high. Why you see people with low self-esteem at an all-time high. Because those two things are absolutely related. How angry and your self-esteem, those things go hand in hand with how society is going as a whole. And we need to learn how not to have offenses. Now, this is really good because the other class we have going on is they're doing a 10-week session on anger. And just one thing. We're doing different things. But you know what? Here's the thing. They're doing it because they have a lot of things going on, and it's mostly our younger crowd, and that's kind of indicative of our society. But if we can learn how to control, take care of our brain, take every thought captive, we can help one another all through that. So a couple things here on how to keep the offense from becoming part of who we are, or better, who we want to be. When you take offense to something, it's just holding you back. When you got to learn how to let it go, because all the offense does is make you keep revisit the past. If you keep going back to the past, you're going forward. You're not going forward, okay? And you want to keep in your rearview mirror. The problem is eventually you want to drive far enough that it drops out of your rearview mirror. If it's still in your rearview mirror, one of two things is happening. You're going very slow, or you've gone and you've circled back around so it can get back in your rearview mirror again. And if you're going in circles, you ain't getting anywhere. Okay? Problem is, though, people like to run in circles. They'll say they don't, but the proof of the pudding is in our society, we like to run in circles. We like to revisit the same thing. Well, okay, I'm truly over that. Well, if you're truly over that, why are you bringing it back up? Think about that. Okay, I'm over it. Okay. But let me remind you of that. Don't you dare. all of a sudden you're not over it. You just circled your car back around and it's right there again. And you don't want to have that happen. So 5 quick things here. I think it was 5. Practice self-awareness. Take time to reflect on what triggers you and what your tendencies are when you feel defensive. Now, the key word here is your. Well, if they just stop doing that. No. It's not. We got to change how we are fundamentally. Because here's the thing. People are going to do things and say things. We need to say, how can we change ourselves so we don't allow the offense to get through our armor in the first place? Understanding yourself better can help you to recognize when you might be in danger of taking offense. So what are your triggers? Now, what's a good way to do this? Start an argument with your wife. Oh, you're fine. Oh, Liz. Well, where's Sandy when we need her? Okay, all right. But actually, he's on the right idea. When you have an argument or you are offended, write down why you felt that way. A good thing is to have an emotional journal. Because here's the thing, you need to understand yourself. How many times people go, I know exactly who I am. You know how rare it is that you actually know who you are, without going and looking introspectively. Yeah, I got it right. Looking inside is a thing. And being aware of not so much the surroundings, but how you react to the surroundings. Now, here's the thing. Just because you react that way, okay, doesn't make your reaction wrong. But here's what happens is you now can be in control of it rather than it being in control of you. That is the key. Second thing is cultivate a life-giving objective perspective. So instead of focusing on the negative, focus on the positive aspects of the situation. This can help shift your perspective and reduce your tendency to take offense. So how would that work? Okay. Instead of focusing, now here's the thing. When you feeling that offense come up, it's kind of hard to find the positive, right? So how do you find a positive in that? Like he said, hey, how about looking at it from their point of view? What are they going through? Like the guy who was mad at him and from the sermon, and and he called him and he found his son was going through that. Another way is like this. Hey, do you want this person in your life? Are you going to let one offense ruin it all, or are you going to let 20 offenses ruin it all? Right? Because remember, it takes 2 people to make this happen. No, it's not about getting along. Here's the thing: there might be people you don't get along with, okay, and that's fine. But they can still ruin your life or ruin your day by how they. Sometimes you just gotta say, "Hey, I'm going to shake the dust off with that person. I'm not going to hang around them." But that's you realizing, "Hey, I'm not going to let them cause a trigger because I'm going to keep the trigger from happening." Yeah, you're allowed to do that. God says that. Now, God hangs around everybody, but He knows we can't hang around everybody. He gives us Bible verses. If you're in a relationship, there are biblical ways to get out of a relationship. No, to stop a relationship, not get out of it. If you're looking to get out of it, you should never got to do it in the first place. All right. But how to deal with people in the church, how to deal, if someone's not listening, when to shake the dust off your feet. There are times like that because He knows we're human. And it's okay for that. We don't have to be all things to all people all the time. We can't be. We ain't God. Huh? Peg? No, Peg said something. Oh, you agree with me? Yes. And so sometimes we get, as Christians, we got to love everybody. No, even in the church, we're not going to like everybody in the church, what everybody does. But here's the thing. You can still cohabitate with them. You can still be with them in the same family, but just say, hey, I'm just not going to allow that type of thing into my life, or that whatever they're doing. It's okay with that because you're going to have people like that. But can we have an objective perspective? Okay, how do I know this will lead me into this, which will then lead down a spiral, and I don't want to go down that spiral. that make sense? Yeah, pray for them. Yes, Jim. I can see you. Your hand's been going like this for like. Very fast. Yes. Now, Jim just made a great. People learn how to push a button, and I said very fast, and Jim said you have to learn. See, that's the problem. We want them to adapt to us, right? We need to learn how to adapt. Why? First of all, not for to protect ourselves, and second of all, to change the culture of that. You could actually help change that person. Yeah. Yeah, if you keep letting, here's the thing, you don't have to let anybody offend you at all. God never said we're supposed to be doormats. Okay, a lot of Christians think they got to be doormats, put up a lot of stuff. That's not what God says. Okay, and that's what's having an objective perspective, kind of taking that step back and looking at the whole picture. The next one, use empathy. Yes, Eric. Oh, but he said, just stop. You could. Yep, you could get clarity. And also comes back to that thing I've practiced this morning. If someone's really, say it right back to them, and then you're not, think about it. It's amazing because you actually have to listen to what they're having to say, and you get to throw it back at them without being offensive either, because all you do is repeating exactly what they said to you. How can someone take offense to their own words? Well, they can, but, but here's the thing. But it gives them a chance to either go on with the offense or stop the offense. But stopping it, don't give it a place. How often when someone start, how they're going to push your button. Well, if you're ready to push back, stop, right, and take control of it. Here it says use empathy. Try understanding the other person's perspective and reasons behind their behavior or words. This can help you see things from their point of view and not take things personally. And that's the last part is not take things personally. When someone offends you, I'm going to tell you it's not 100% because nothing's 100%. But a lot of times the reason why they're pushing your button is because something's wrong in their life. People would much rather, ever heard this phrase, people love misery? Misery loves company, right? they don't love misery, but they love company when they're miserable, right? And they would like people to be more miserable than they are. And here's the thing, you have a chance right there. Okay, why are they doing this? Because it could be someone close to you that knows your buttons. So why are they doing that? Yeah. Suzanne, did I see your hand? Hurt people. Yeah, they do. So let's swing this around to the spiritual gifts class. I'll get your hand in a second. In the summer, we're going to, actually not the summer, this week you can get a letter. We're going to start taking each gift and having a small group with everybody in each gift and starting to help you learn how to use them. In the summer, we're going to do, Johnny gave away part of my letter. We're going to do a boot camp. Thank you, Johnny, for jumping the gun this morning. All right, but what gift of the Spirit would go with this? Mercy, yeah. Because it's something deep down. This is where you go find someone with that gift of mercy who can deal with something. It needs to be dealt with behind the scenes. It's not a public thing, but someone who has that deep down gift of mercy where you can offend them, but they're not going to get offended because they have this special spiritual armor with mercy. Another gift to go with this would be, one of the spiritual gifts. That's not a spiritual gift. Not encouragement. What? I said I'm going with always. I'm saying there's specific gifts. There's 3 in particular. Faith would be another one, because you need somebody who has the armor to see beyond the situation. And the other one, believe it or not, is one you wouldn't think of, but it actually fits the definition. It's called hospitality. Hospitality is not just taking someone. Hospitality is taking someone in. It's like the Good Samaritan, someone who's hurt. You see them hurt, and you're willing to do whatever it is to help them get better. A person with the gift of hospitality will take that person literally under. It could be physically, could also be emotionally, and it could be spiritually. Jim laughed because that's one of his gifts. And strangers come to him all the time and offend him. Guess what, buddy? You see why you got that gift. Later, he's going to tell a story. Everybody at Wendy's tonight, Jim's going to tell a story. All right. Okay, Elizabeth, you had your hand up.
People come from different backgrounds and different ways of doing things and being, and that lack of understanding can cause a lot of grief for absolutely no good reason.
And it's a lack of, and you know, that's the problem. Why do people get hurt and leave churches and you know things? It's because they get they get this offense, and if they would just ask a question. They would just say something. You know, it's amazing. You know, as we get older, it's like, oh, I didn't like what the pastor did, or I didn't like what that person did, or I didn't like what that ministry did. Okay, well, go talk to them. But what's our society say? Oh, I can't do that. I don't want to. You know, and it's amazing how that could have that. And here's the thing: we need to have empathy for that person coming to us, and don't look at them as attacking you. Look at them saying, "Hey, there's got to be a reason why, because, hey, we've been going to church forever together. Or we've been friends forever together. Or we've been, you know, there's one moment in time should not destroy everything. Okay. But doesn't it? Hey, we look at our lives, they all come down to moments in time when it should be a whole life. But we allow one moment or certain moments in time, everything. How dumb is that? You know what? If you go into life thinking, well, that's who they did that one dumb thing, so they're just dumb forever. Think about it. How many times you've done one dumb thing and people think you're dumb forever? But that's how our society is, isn't it? What have you done for me lately, right? That's the society, right? And God's saying, no, you can't be like that. Yes. Yeah. Are you focused on your offense? Or you focus on the compassion of Christ. Imagine if God lived like we did. No, we wouldn't be. You know. How many times do we offend Him daily? How many times did He look up and say, "Man, why are they doing that same dumb thing again?" You know, they come to church every week and they hear Pastor Devin say the same thing, and then Pastor Devin says, "Hey, do you remember saying this?" And no one remembers that. No, I'm kidding. No. You know. But, you know, think about that. We have, you know, how we offend God. All right. Practice forgiving others is the key to not taking offense. Holding on to resentment and anger only harms you and can lead to deeper feelings of offense. Now, forgiving, you know, is you deciding you'll forgive them. Doesn't mean they're going to accept that, because holding on to resentment really only harms you, because here's the thing. When they've offended you, they don't think they've done anything wrong. They don't care, right? So here's the thing. Well, I'm going to be mad at them and I'm going to hold it against them. They don't even know you're holding it against them. All you're doing is keeping a relationship from going forward. Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they might not care, or they might be wrapped up in their own pain. You don't know what's going on. But how many times we take offense and, man, I'm waiting for them to come. They got to come to me. What's the Bible says? Someone offends you, go to them. Matthew 18. You know, that's the first thing. And I do it all the time. And when someone's offended, I'll go talk to them. And a lot of times they don't want to talk, but that's fine. But you got to go. You know, it's amazing how quickly we're willing to give up relationships over a moment. Seek support. Surround yourself with supportive people who can encourage and uplift you when you feel offended. Thus, the gift of encouragement. Yes. A supportive network can help you manage your emotions and not take offense. If your emotions are out of whack, you're going to be out of whack. That's why God gives the gift of encouragement to the church. That is when they see it coming to the surface, that's when, and publicly, that's when the gift of encouragement comes in and say, hey, surround yourself with people like that. Surround people. And when you're just, especially when we're offended, the last thing we're like, just leave me alone. Anybody ever had that feeling? I just need to go deal with this. That is the wrong answer. Because here's what will happen. You will get alone. And because you're offended, and because now you're letting the devil talk to you, now you're seeing, and the devil's going to let you see things that never were in the first place, and you're going to read into it, and you're going to have this really long list of things that never were part of the thing in the first place. And when you seek support, people keep you from going down to that spiral. And they can help you see the other things we just talked about, empathy and saying, hey, don't allow this to change who you are fundamentally. Problem is, our society fundamentally has chosen to be in a society of easily offended people. But we have to be different. And if they see that, it'll also bring the love of Christ out better. Because they'll see something different. It doesn't take 1 million people. There's 21 of us in this room, and there's 15 or so in John's room. If 35 of us around town did that in all our different places of work, when we're at the grocery store, when we're at the bank or whatever, imagine people. And when someone offends you and you say, oh, okay, I'm going to take that. Or you're going to practice mirroring or whatever, and however you do it. I don't suggest doing that with a police officer. And just so you know, okay? There are certain places, use your brain, folks. Don't use it in certain situations, okay? All right. But, yes, Eric. No, people like to keep score? Really? Yes, they do. But that's the car going in circles. Here's the thing. If you're going to hold something, here's what's going to happen. You're never going to move forward. You want to know why you don't hear the voice of God anymore, or why you don't feel such and such to go in this room, why you don't have. I'm telling you, it's real. The answer is real simple. All right, because you got to let it go. Like he said, let go of all. So easy, isn't it? So easy. Easier said than done. Yes, Susie.
In that story, like, that was so obvious, like, you cared more about the rose bushes than, hey, I have this nice neighbor who's upbeat all the time and stuff, like, that was what she should have been focusing on more, like building that relationship. And then, I think another thing, like, that's cool about the Bible is one that, like, don't let a root of bitterness spring up, because she let that spring up, she never pulled it up, and like in the end, the whole place was like devastated. So that's what, like, it hurts you, you're hurting yourself.
Yeah, you are, and it's amazing. We don't really value relationships like we used to. That's why every week we do a salvation call, and I talk about relationship. It's amazing. We think, oh, I'll just go find another relationship. The problem is, once you get spurned one relationship and you don't try to fix it, then the next one's quicker to fall apart. And so on and so on and so on, because our tolerance of being offended gets really shortened. It doesn't get longer. And because we don't want to practice it. And as soon as something else happens, we're like, what? That's the same thing. I got to get rid of that and go on to something else. The problem is it takes work. No one's going to be perfect. I wish that was the case. It's just not. But you know what? We got to say, hey, there's got to be a reason why. And that's what we got to look for. And then the last one is practice gratitude. Thank God for the good and praise him in the not so good. Focus on blessing. This can help you not take things for granted and keep things in perspective. The more thankful we are. This morning, Joanne had that song, Thank You. The more we have that, and we really understand God's put these things in our lives and why things happen. And you're being offended. You could be in a place to help somebody. You could, God, hey, you're giving me a chance to use my gifts in that area. You're giving me a chance to do something. Can we look to say, hey, why is this happening? There's always a reason why something happens. Yes, Larry. Yes, it takes work. Yeah. Mary Lou just said amen. Just like a marriage, it takes good times, it takes work. But what are we averse to in our society nowadays? Working at things, right? If you don't really like your job, hey, you move on. The average person under 40-year-old stays at the job 8 months and then they move on to the next job. And it's amazing, it's just they don't want to stay at it. We don't want to, and now we're in the post-COVID era. It's even worse. Like I don't need to do things like everybody should take care of it. We don't want to put the work in, and then it dwindles down to relationships. And if your relationships, you don't put the work into relationships, guess what? You won't have any good quality of life. Because here's the thing: I don't care how much money you have, how much stuff you have. If you don't have good quality relationships, you don't have much of a life. And you won't come to God then, because then because what happens? It'll translate to your relationship with God, because that's what we see. Just ask Solomon. Yeah. Yeah. That's and one of the reasons why we're doing Ecclesiastes right now. Ecclesiastes is anybody know what the theme of Ecclesiastes is? Vanity. Well, he says that a lot. The book comes down to one really simple concept. Yeah, regret. He tried everything his way, not God's way, and the whole book's about regret. It's actually a very, very depressing book. But here's the thing you learn from. Solomon was the wisest guy who ever lived, richest guy who ever lived, had everything, but he didn't understand how not to be gratitude. All these things here we're talking about ruin his life. He even talks about in Ecclesiastes 3, even one of the most famous songs of all time is taken from Ecclesiastes 3 by the Byrds. Come on, you guys are the older crowd. Never heard of the Byrds? Time. Huh? No, time. There's a time for war, a time for the song they sing. Every night. I can't think of all the words. Yeah. Turn, turn, turn. Yeah, okay. Go. That's all good. Go look at it. But Solomon talks about all these things are going to happen. The question is, they're going to happen. They don't have to affect you because you have a choice of how you're going to let this affect you. Yes? Oh, I thought you were going to say something. You can't. Yeah, sometimes you can't. Yeah. And that's what he's talking. How do you get to control your reaction? Now the question is, are you going to take, like he said tonight, stop before you do anything? Because here's the thing: however you react could keep the other react. It's kind of, you ever seen a nuclear explosion? How it happens is one molecule gets bumped into another, that then bumps into another, and eventually they frenzy and bump, and that's what a nuclear reaction is. Because but if there's any time in between one of the reactions, the nuclear reaction stops. The same thing is with relationships. If there's time, we can stop the nuclear bomb of relational nuclear bombs going off by taking the time to stop, reflect, and do all these things. Okay, yes, and then we'll get to the verses. That'd be great. That's another way to do it. Hard to do. Harder said than done. Now, here's the thing. You can walk away, but here's the thing when you walk away. If you walk away, you got to walk away ignoring what had happened. If you walk away and then let it emotionally affect you and then you start crying about it or reliving it over and over again, you haven't walked away from it. So a lot of people say, I'm just going to walk away. Problem is, if you allow the thoughts to stay with you, have you really walked away from it? It's better just to stop and then deal with it right there and then but with your right mind. And the key is to take that breather, like he said, or like I said this morning, just intently listen and say it right back to him. You cannot be getting mad if you're trying intently to listen, because it's so hard to listen to somebody when they're mad at you. All right? Because you're forming your thought process on how I'm going to tell them how wrong and stupid they are, right? Rather than, and then when you're trying to listen to what they have to say, because you're going to say it back to them, you're also giving a chance to go, oh, why are they saying this? And different thoughts get to come in. All right, a couple. Huh?
One thing I discovered a long time ago when I was still in the cutting things off without thinking.
Yes.
They're back and they're going, I didn't say that. Because what they actually meant to say isn't what they actually said.
Exactly. What comes, people say things and it sounds so different in your head than it does when it comes out of these two little. It's amazing how the translation changes from here to here. It's just absolutely amazing. Larry.
Men usually walk up and want to punch you. Huh? Think about this. If a lion offended you, would you jump in the cage and punch his legs off?
All right, we're going to go on a couple verses based on our discussion a couple weeks ago. We're just going to read through Ecclesiastes 7:21-22. Also, do not take to heart everything people say. Boy, that's a good one, isn't it? But how often do we do that too? Lest you hear your servant cursing you. For many times also your own heart is known that even you have cursed others. So what's Solomon saying here? God's saying here, you say, hey, don't take to heart everything people say. If you do that, you're going to put up a shell around you. Here's the thing. If you to protect yourself from offensive things, you're going to put a shell to protect yourselves from loving things. A defensive shell protects you from both. And God says, I'll protect you. And remember, many times your own heart has done those things as well. And realize that all that. Oh, yes, Masaka, somebody online. Yes. What is harder said than done? Well, harder said than done is simply this. When you say, hey, go back thing. Stop doing it all. That's easy to do, easy to say. Much harder to stop. I'm not going to get bitter anymore. I'm not going to get mad anymore, ever. Yeah, that's easy to say, but hard to do. I'm gonna, when someone offends me, I'm just gonna listen. And I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna tell them back what it is, and I'm not gonna get mad at all. That's what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. That is easy to say. Hard to. No, it's not. It can happen. It takes practice. It takes work. See, now here's the thing. Society has given up, said there's no way to fix it, and they do that. It's never going to happen. The problem is, never is reserved for one person and one person alone. That's God. We have the ability to change. Yeah, well, we can say that, but you do. Now, here's the thing. When you think that way for a long period of time, it's going to take a longer time to change. That's the whole problem, right? Yep. Oh, we can. We're not dogs. We have a brain, right? But you know what? Here's the thing. When you get to that point, that's when you got to say, God, change me. Remember this morning we talked about, do we give it all to God? Or do we really give it all to God? Yeah. Okay. Oh, 3 hands. Okay. Suzanne, Larry, Susie. Suzanne. No.
It's about us giving it to God so that He can repent, so that we can focus on Him more than our frustration, focus on Him more than our pain, focus on Him more than whatever it is that we need to work there.
Yeah. Focus on him more than focus on us. Once again, easier said than done. But you know what? The more we do it, the better we'll get at it. And that's the thing. And she talked about patterns. That's why he's calling all these things. Each class has been a pattern of this, a pattern. We can change the pattern if we're willing to work at it. Larry. Yeah, I wish we used it all the time. Susie. You know, it's amazing. I've heard that 21-day things. And if it's true, here's the thing. 21 days is really not a lot in the whole scheme of things. But it is hard. I'll give you an example. I'm going to elaborate on our wonderful young married couple over here. How you doing today? And what is our first marriage session? I gave you a task. What was it? To do every night. 5-minute date. They had every day before they went to bed, have 5 minutes where they would say something nice about the other person. Now, the first couple days, pretty easy, right? And then eventually it got a little bit harder, didn't it? Here was the rule. You can never repeat anything. But here's the thing. If you're going to love somebody for the rest of your life, if you can't spend a couple minutes at the end of every day, now here's the beauty of this thing. At the end of the day, if you do that, even if you're mad at the person, but you have to do this in the night, you got to say something nice about them, you're going to go to bed with a better frame of mind. And then if you're mad during the day, you have to think during the day what you're going to say to them. And if you don't have anything to say, you got to think about what you're going to say. So you're actually thinking about the person you love throughout the day. Now, here's the thing. And now with them, it's great. I've had other couples do marriage counseling, and they give up. They only make it through about 2 or 3 days, and they have nothing else to say. And it's like, if you can't make that through, you're probably not going to make it through marriage. Now we have another couple, Kendra and Bill. You all know Kendra and Bill. They're in the anger class. Not sure why, but okay, just kidding. They still do the 5-minute date to this day. And it's an amazing thing, but it's about, rewiring, and it takes, and I tell them do it for 14 days, and then you keep doing it. But we think 21 days is like, oh, that's nothing, but it's hard. It is hard. And, but it's actually doable. Yes, Susie. I like to study your brain.
Found like a lot of negative patterns in their brain. So they were trying to say, well, that person's born that way. They can't help it that they're committing the crime because they're born that way. But then they proved like it's because of keeping thinking negative, that their brain's wired that way. And you can always rewire your brain.
Yeah, we have a free will. It's become even it's used in our legal system that they were predisposed to this, or this is how, but here's the thing. Yeah, you might have all this around you, but here's the thing is you still ultimately have the choice. And yes, you can have this environment, you can have that going on, but here's the thing. Just as no matter how negative is around you, there's always someone around you who is positive. You can find there's no such thing as an ultimate negative environment or an ultimate positive environment. And now there can be lean heavily one way or the other. But we reach out and we can change our thought process. We can do that. The question is, do we want to change it? Often, more times than not, we like who we are. And we go, well, this is the way it works for me. Well, that's great. Well, have you asked God if that works for him? Yes. Love conquers all. It absolutely does. But only the love that God says love is, not Hollywood's version of love or what we think love is. And we're going to finish that in the next couple of weeks. Amen. James 1:19. So then, my beloved brethren, Let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. Now, here's James is nice. He's talking to the church, and he's saying, "My beloved brethren," who I really don't like right now. He's sweetening the pot. Okay, in psychology, we call this building a sandwich. You start nice, then you say what you want to say, and then you start end nice. It's called building a sandwich. Because he said, if you start out saying, you dummies, they won't listen to him. Okay, so my beloved brethren, I love you. Let every man be what? Swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. The problem is, what is it? We do this in reverse order, don't we? We are swift to wrath, right? And slow to hear, and we're definitely swift to speak too, right? You know, it's amazing how we do that. And God's saying, no, do the opposite, because as soon as something goes, we got to get our word in edgewise, don't we? Right? But God says, be swift to hear. And then slow to speak, meaning and close your trap, okay? And then slow to wrath. I'll tell you right now, if you're slow to speak, you will ultimately be also slow to wrath. Because wrath doesn't come from the brain, doesn't really come from the heart. It comes from what comes out of these two things here. That's where wrath comes from. Because once the wrath comes out of here, you start to get these other, like he talked about, these other endorphins and all these things, dopamine, all these things start going on. And when you actually are doing wrath, you actually feel good for a certain period of time, because it gets these things going inside you. The problem is the damage that you leave far outweighs the somewhat good feeling you had at that moment in time. Yes, Linda. Is silence golden? I think it can be. Silence is golden in a couple areas. Number one, it keeps you from boiling up into anger. But silence just by itself is not golden. Because it doesn't say be silent here. It says be not only to be slow to speak, but swift to hear. While you're silent, you got to fill that with something. And that is listening. And that is trying to see it from empathy. Try to see it from a different angle. Force yourself to do that. And then silence becomes golden. If you're just silent and you're just going in one ear and out the other ear, it's not going to do any good. Yes. Yeah.
Or you're ruminating, right? What's going on in your mind a lot, and you're like, this, for me, it was, okay, God does not want this for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if God does not want this for me, what do I do with it? At the time I didn't know, but I knew that I could bring it to Him in prayer. And that was all that I needed to do, because from there, He brought me the people to learn more, to change.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you're caught in that negative, this is a productive emotion, whatever it is, being able to take that to God and just catching yourself, right?
Yeah.
Taking those thoughts, stop, catch yourself, bring it to God before you do anything. Because if you do it, you're more likely to make it work.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like I said, the world treats this verse opposite. You switch swift and slows, and then you get what we get in the world.
Right? We're offended.
Hmm?
That's our wrath. You say it's the words, but I think it's the thoughts first, because as soon as we're offended in thought, the wrathful thought comes, and no longer are we listening, we're thinking about what we're going to say.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's why we got to be slow, because as soon as it happens, we're already thinking our response. And here's the thing, your response is, and here's the thing, when you're thinking about your response, when you're in that motive, when you're in that wrath mode, your response is never going to be Jesus' response. It's not, because we're humans. We don't have that ability to do that. You know, and that's how God does it. Yes, Susie. Once you calm down, you go, I didn't really mean that. The problem is it's already crossed the bridge. And here's the thing, you can say that, and someone can say, okay, I accept that, but they're going to remember that. The idea is to learn how not to have to cross that bridge in the first place. And you know what? The world does all the time, and then they go back. The problem is then they cross the bridge again with another thought, and I didn't really mean that. Once you've done it 3 or 4 times, yeah, you did mean it. Okay, all right. But if you learn, we got to learn to say, there's that bridge. Do I really want? Because once you cross that bridge, trust me, once it's out there, it's out there. No, you can't. Oh, let me take that back. No, sorry. It's not possible. It's over. Now, here's the thing. With grace and understanding and learning each other, we can allow that not to offend us. And then we can learn how to help one another with it. This is what it's about. Helping, not just protecting you, but helping others learn how this is how it's supposed to work. Yes. Okay, now, what does the word wrath mean? Anger, action. It's an action, right? Slow to wrath. Does God do wrath? Oh yeah, he talks about it, right? The battle hymn of the Republic is the grapes of wrath, right? Right? Now here's the is when you basically, and this is the way it's going to be. Wrath is not necessarily bad, but it's final. When you're where you're wrathful, it's like Popeye. I've taken as much as I'm going to take. All right, you remember the old Popeye, and wrath. But here's the thing: when God deals out His wrath, He does it in a way that's correcting. He still loves you, okay? And sometimes you got to tell people the way it is, but there's a way that produces a positive result, and there's a way that produces a negative result. And if you're slow to wrath, when you finally get to that point, the person who you now need to just go Popeye on, hopefully realizes that you're actually doing this because now this needs to happen. This is it. If we're going to have a friendship, we're going to have this is it. This is the battle line in the thing. But it's after you've taken time. Well, you didn't understand. No, you've been slow to speak and swift to hear, and you've built up this. And now you say these are the evidences. And if you're not going to change, this is what I'm going to say is going to happen, and it's wrath because it's this emotion that's coming out, but it's a finality type of thing. But when you're slow to it, you've given that person the ability to get all their things out and say, now this is where I'm at. At some point, you can't just always let everything go. At some point, you have to act on things that happen because you're allowed to defend yourself. You're not supposed to be a doormat. Corrective action is wrath too. Yes, do all you do out of love. Now, it's hard to do when you're doing it in the moment. But if you're swift to hear and slow to speak, when it gets to that Popeye moment, you can act. The person not only sees you bowing up, but also seeing your actions before then, and a light should go on their head saying something different this time. And it's not just a knee-jerk reaction. It's something that's been thought about. You've heard it. You've held your tongue. But I can't stand no more. And sometimes someone needs that can't stand no more moment in life. If you just let them go forever, what happens? They could go down the wrong path forever. And it's people go, well, every Christian has to. Niceness is also those wrath moments. Okay, in Bible college we call them the come to Jesus meetings. All right, I don't know why we call them that. I've had a few of those in my lifetime. I don't feel no Jesus in those meetings. All right, yeah, okay. I don't know if you know this. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I wasn't as wise as I am now and said a lot of dumb things. All right, okay. Yes, Eric. Yeah, that's the ultimate. Hey, the judgment sees the ultimate come to Jesus meeting. Yes. Yeah. Well, that meaning you want Jesus to come because he's the God's saying this is. Oh, then Jesus says, "Nope, I know him. He can go." Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. But yeah. All right, we'll do a couple more and then we'll go out and eat. Proverbs 19:11. The discretion of a man makes him slow to anger, and his glory is to overlook a transgression. Now, takes a little unpacking here. Discretion, that word invokes you are in control. Discretion, you give discretion. You say, I am going to, how far it's going to go, makes a man slow to anger. How, basically, you get to say where you're going to draw your line in the sand. Okay? And his glory is to overlook a transgression. Now, it doesn't mean you let someone get away with it. When it uses the word overlook today, all they just overlooked that. They got away. No, that's not what it's saying. It's saying, I'm overlooking what you did, okay, in order to give you a chance to change. Okay? And the glory in that is it's the word actually translates here better is the wisdom of that person. Because here's the thing, if you just harp on that person right there and then they're just going to harp back, giving them a chance. In the New Testament, Paul says it'd be better to be wrong to win someone to Christ than to call everybody out on their faults. Sometimes you need to, like this morning, suffer a little bit, but you have the discretion where that line's going to be to give that other person the opportunity, because one day you're going to be on the other side of the coin. But doesn't mean you say, well, they did that, I'm just going to let it go. Now, the problem is in a lot of churches today, that's how they go. We're just going to let everything go. No, it doesn't mean overlook it forever, but for a period of time to give them a chance to change on their own before you have, and this is also about being slow to wrath, but wrath can come because later on in Proverbs, God gives reasons when you can. Well, now it's time to stop overlooking that. You're not overlooking it and forgetting about it. You still see it there. But what you're doing is you're not acting out of anger on your end to give them a chance to fix the relationship. You want to give the opportunity for the relationship to still go forward. And the glory is, or the wisdom of that person is, well, man, you could have just ended everything, but you allowed me to put up with my mistakes for a little bit. I appreciate that. That's glory, because their glory is lifting someone up. I look at it all through my lifetime. How many times I've gone to, I had a pastor friend of mine was dying. I went to go see him. His name was Pastor Grable. He was the first pastor who gave me my big chance. And I just got married to Joanne. Was in my younger 20s. I thought I knew everything. I thought he was the pastor, but I was going to show him how to do it the right way. And, people have that when they're young, right? And he put up with me a lot of things. Eventually, ended up going to another church and things like that, but never fired, never anything like this. And when he was about to die, I wanted to come see. We every time I went back to State College, we went out to lunch, and then he was about to die, and I came in one last time, and he's like, "So you want advice on how to be a senior?" I said, "No, I don't. I wanted to come thank you, because if I was in your shoes, I would have fired me many times." But you overlooked a lot of the dumb things I did because you saw something in me, and I thanked him for that. That was the last thing I said to him before he died. But you know what? And that's what he's talking about here, where you're looking at someone else saying, how can I help them? Now, it doesn't mean you have to be a doormat. Doesn't mean you should be abused in any way, shape, or form. But the discretion, once again, back to there, you get to set the boundary. Now, if someone crosses that boundary, by all means, do what you need to do. Oh, wow. Someone's watching me online because I just said that. Oh, Paul's listening to me and watching to me at the same time. It's 7 seconds behind, or 7 or 8 seconds behind. But here's the deal here. It's funny hearing myself all of a sudden. All right. Okay. But does that verse make sense? It helps. Yes. Eric. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that gives them the chance to see.
Now,
If they did this, and the person didn't act like everybody else, what's the difference?
exactly.
Most people from 0 to 100.
Yes.
Once.
Yeah.
But if you give the person a chance, then the person may come to you afterwards and go, why did you give me that chance?
Exactly. It's about giving somebody, and there are certain things to go nuclear on. There's certain things you don't have to go nuclear on. And when God writes this, you got to think about it from God's point of view. The wages of sin is death, right? For all sin and fall short of the glory of God. So God has the ability to go nuclear on everything. But he doesn't, so that's the glory of the Lord, right? But he also knows we're humans and we don't have his same. Yeah, we'll never be able to draw the line in the sand where he draw. God never draws a line in the sand, which is nice. But he knows we will. And we have to, because we are finite beings. All right. I think I got two more. Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. You know, how often, you want God to fight for you? What's God say? Hold your peace. Now, it doesn't say hold it forever. Now, how long you hold it is back to the last verse. Your discretion. But let God, and when someone offends you, here's what you do. Don't just let it, it's not going to, by the way, if you think it's going to roll off your back like a duck, like water on a duck, it's not going to happen. Okay? When you're done with that person, the first thing you should immediately do is then go say, God, hey, this really didn't go well for me. But God says, I will guard your heart, and I will fight for you. Now, how he fights for you is what? Different, right? God, I want you to go kill him. You can ask God for that. God's not probably going to do that. All right? But God's going to do it in a way that either protects you or brings that person around to the right side of things. God cares for every single person, even though some people we don't care for. But that's who we are as humans. That happens, right? But when you hold your peace and say, God, I want to and when someone offends you, you're not going to feel peace. But give it to God and say, God, I'm going to hold on to that, and then God will fight for you. But when you hold on to it and keep it, God can't fight for you, because what if God does do a work in that person's life, but you're not there to be there to accept that person? Yes.
Leave it to him and see how it works out. I have found that. Even trying to help him.
Yeah, God doesn't need, you don't need to help. Give it to God and let God do it. You don't need to help God. If God needs your help, we in trouble. All right? Okay, God don't need your help. And he wants to take it from you. That's what, like this morning we talked about, there's people say they give it to God, but do you really give it to God? And by the way, do you really want to feel like, if you felt crap already, do you want to keep feeling like crap? Give it to, why? Give the crap to the person who says, I'll take it. And walk away, right? And let God turn into something else, right? And see what God can do with that. Let him fight for you. Now, here's the thing. He's fighting for you, so for your result. Whether that person changes or not, or maybe God removes that person from your life. Though we're not asking for the lightning bolt or that, though occasionally I pray for the bears. You've all heard that story many times. I love that story. And every time I do that, usually about 10 minutes later, God's like, do you really want that? And how God does it says, there's people out there want bears to come after you. All right, Colossians 3:13, bearing with one another and forgiving one another. If anyone has a complaint against another, even as Christ forgave you, so you also, yeah, that's an M word, huh? Must do. If you really want to get rid of the offenses, you just got to say, now you don't go to the person and say, I forgive you, because that can cause a whole, because they don't even think they're wrong most of the time in the first place, okay? But you got to say in your heart, I'm willing when the time comes. If that person wants forgiveness, I'm ready. Doesn't mean you have to be ready in that moment, but you got to have that mindset. Because here's the thing, how many times have we offended the Lord? And every time he's ready to forgive us, no questions asked. Now, the thing is, that's really hard for us to comprehend, because there's some people that person came to me and said, please forgive me for everything I did wrong. Some of us would probably say, I don't know if I could do that. It could be. But can we get to that? But that's why it's called grace. That's why God extends that to us so we can learn how to be more, what's God say? Imitate me, right? Be perfect as I am perfect. Boy, that's a tough one, isn't it? But you know what? The more we can do that, here's the thing. This pattern of offense and not letting you get offended has nothing to do with the other person. God will do it with the other person. It's about your peace of mind. It's about your quality of life. It's not allowing someone else to ruin your quality. So that's what happens. You're letting someone else ruin that. Yes, Suzanne. Want me to quote it? Well, I'll quote it. The law is all summed up in this. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, body, soul, and strength. And the second commandment is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. If we practice those, it will change things. But it's about, God wants you to protect, he doesn't want you to protect others. So sometimes we get into, well, I got to save everybody. No, God doesn't. God says, protect your quality of life, protect your blessings, use your spiritual gifts to enhance your life, and then others will be drawn as you lift God up in your life. So you don't have to go out and convince people about God. You just got to lift God up. And one of the ways you lift God up is by giving God the crap, the crud, and saying, I'm not going to allow that to affect, boy, that person really bummed me out today. Well, if you're bummed out, you need to do a couple things. Go back to the beginning and other things, especially go find someone to support, or go on the board and find the encouraging people who are encouraged all the time, even though, and let them just be sappy, funny, encouraging with you all day long until you get out of the funk, you know? Find someone who's going to make you laugh. My wife does it to me all the time when I'm like that. She'll tickle me. She's not ticklish, but I am, and it's unfair. But, we have all that, right? But find that support, and because, people out there are just, they want you to be bummed out. If they're bummed out, they think they feel better, but then they feel worse at the end. Because then they all feel regret at some point. We all have that inside of us. Because here's the thing. We were all created with a mind, right? What is the okay, let's take God out of the thing. Okay, what's proved that we have a mind that thinks about what is the overriding theme in our society? Any society, no matter what religion they're at. Not me. What's everybody want to do? Fight. But they all want to be what? They all want people to call them what? Number one, no. They want to be known as good. They're a good person. Right? Good triumphs over evil, right? Even have that, right? The good guy should win, right? And you have all these different things, right? Okay. What is good? The problem is what is good is God says he's the only one that's what? Good. Someone has to be able to determine what is good. And if you then determine I'm going to do what the good person says, then you're going to end up what? You're going to have that good feeling. You're going to have that into your life. People are looking for that. And it's inside of us. And people go, well, there is no God. But if there is no God, why? There's no reason to do good. Right? If there's no God, then you just die. Right? Is there any incentive to do good? No, if there is no afterlife, go out and rape, pillage, kill, steal, do whatever you want, because there's no consequences. So why do we have this innate desire to do? Even thieves have a certain code to a certain extent, right? You can tick off the mafia boss or the cartel boss. You can do all the evil stuff, but you do one thing that he doesn't like. You're no longer good's different depending on the eye of the beholder, right? But we have that inside of us that we want to ultimately do good in whatever our mindset is. Problem is, human mindset doesn't get it. But God tells us what that is. And as we strive to do that, when God does, he protects that inside of us. He protects that feeling inside of us. And God takes it beyond the feeling of good to the feeling of righteousness. Righteousness, anybody know what the root word of righteousness is? Right. Okay, yeah. It comes from a different root, actually. Being clean. No, isn't that what people want? They don't want to have a guilty conscience. They want to feel clean. And why do people make other people feel miserable? Because if they're dirtier than they are, they feel better. Everybody wants to feel what? Better. They want to feel clean. And when people, and when we, and I want to put that on us. And so we learn how to not let the offenses come on us in the first place. We can also then show them how they can too become clean one day, because like Eric said, it's so different than the world's mindset. It is absolutely different than the world's mindset. Yes. People want to feel valued, that they matter. But overriding that, though, they feel matter, but they want to feel matter, but they also want to know they did it well. Or that, because they're valued, right, in a good way, right. It all comes from that feeling of wanting to be good and clean. And because if they're good and clean and shined up, guess what? Then people look at them and say, you have worth. And the best way to have worth is to be someone that people want to aspire to. That what? Well, God even says he can give us what is here. And his glory, little h, that's us. He wants us to be able to lift up and have that feeling. And not that we're better than them, but we've learned that there's a better way. And you too can have a better way. I had one more. Woe to the world because of offenses. Yeah. This is Jesus speaking, Matthew 18:7. For offenses must come. Man, really? But woe to that man by whom the offense comes. The last part is saying, yeah, offenses are going to come. They're going to happen. But here's the thing. Don't let you be that person. Do your best to not live that type of lifestyle. Know what's coming and say, and here's the thing, God said, and then he goes on to say, I will protect you if you go that way. If you want God's protection, do it his way. Do I have another one? Oh, I have another one. A brother is offended. Oh, this is a good one too. I think this is the last one. A brother offended is harder to win than a strong city. Boy, isn't that true? Contentions are like the bars of a castle. Here's the thing. If you're offended and you're both sides are offended, you're never going to bring that person to your point of view. At some point, someone has to give. God is saying as a Christian, we need to not give, but we need to give room for cooler heads to prevail, for God to do a work into that. Once again, back to that discretion part. Can we do that to give room for things to work out? Because we're all going to be doing dumb things. Yes, Suzanne. Yes. We're give it to God. That's right. And but yeah, once someone's offended and you're offended, it's harder to what? Win that person, isn't it? And just like you, if someone offends you, it's harder for you to want to forgive them or be with them or do it. It's hard, isn't it? And then it's so quickly, then relationships are gone. All right. Oh, and remember who you are in Jesus. I should read over my notes before I. Just one more, yeah. Ephesians 1:5. Having predestined us to adoption as sons by Jesus Christ, according to the good pleasure of his will, to the praise of the glory of his grace, by which he made us accepted in the beloved. In him we have redemption through his blood, to forgive the sins according to the riches of his grace. Remember, that's who you are. God, what's God saying here? You offended me, but I still adopted you. And by the way, when I adopted you, I said no give-backs. Can you live like that? Remember who you are in Christ. And then hopefully, I know what. Yeah. I'm up to number 10. I think I said 14. I'm going to get right to it. It's a story. And being in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper, he sat at the table. A woman came having an alabaster flask of very costly oil of spikenard. And she broke the flask and poured it on his head. But there are some who were indignant among themselves and said, why was this fragrant oil wasted? For it might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor. And they criticized her sharply. But Jesus said, let her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a good work for me. For you have the poor with you always. Whenever you wish, you may do them good. But me you do not have always. She has done what she could. She has come before her to anoint my body for burial. Assuredly, I say to you, wherever this gospel was preached in the whole world, this woman has done will also be told to her as a memorial to her. In this story, this woman walks in and anoints Jesus' feet. Here's the thing. People were offended at what she did. They offended her. They said things to her. Yep. And here's the thing. At the end, okay, she didn't let those things stop her from doing what she wanted to do for the Lord. She didn't let them do that. And what's Jesus say? Wherever this gospel is preached, this what woman be told as a memorial to her. What's God saying? You know what? This woman did this. She was poor. She had all this, and all these people coming against her. She's a sinner. She's a terrible person. All these things. But you know what? Jesus says, you know what? But she didn't let those offenses come to heart. She just focused on the Lord. If you focus on the Lord, trust me, things will work out very well for you. It worked out very well for this woman. Okay? One day we're going to get to heaven. We're going to find out who she was. Don't know her name. But we will in heaven one day know her name. And we'll get to ask her about this. And it's amazing. Jesus is saying, just press into me. People are going to say what they're going to say. They're going to accuse you of things. They're going to say all kinds of things about you. But that's why we had the verses before that. Remember who you are in Christ. And push in the proper way and see what happens. All right. Anybody else have anything tonight? If not, we will. Oh, yes. Is there a next verse? I don't think so. There's not. Yes. Amen. Yep, God's opinion, it's all that really matters in the end. And if he says you're okay, you're okay. Well, dear Lord, we thank you for tonight, Lord, and help us, Lord, to practice this. This definitely is a lot easier to listen to than to actually do in real life. But Lord, all you ask us to do is try. And it is up to our discretion. And we can learn how to do that, do it better. And then by doing that, we'll be so different than the world. The world will ask why. And then we can share why. So they too can come to learn this is the way life is supposed to be and what will bring them the most happiness in life. In Jesus' name, amen. Remember, Jesus loves you. I love you. And you are awesome. We're off to Wendy's to hear Jim's story. Jim has a